When Charles Kingsley III, tech tycoon, walking ego, and the most feared customer in Manhattan, returns to Le Chandelier for his usual Friday night meal and staff intimidation ritual. He expects terrified servers and flawless food. What he doesn't expect is Lola Williams, a mouthy new waitress with zero tolerance for billionaires and a black belt in sarcasm. She calls out his nonsense. He tips in disbelief. She serves him sass with his soup. He keeps coming back. And when one outrageous dinner turns into an unexpected rooftop date, a spectacular ski accident, and a restaurant revolution, Charles begins to realize that money can't buy love. But it might get you roasted into it. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Friday night in Manhattan had its own pulse. A chaotic hum of sirens, honking taxis, and 20-somethings chasing rooftop reservations like it was a competitive sport. But inside the opulent walls of Le Chandelier, it was a different war zone entirely. The chandeliers glittered like they'd been polished by angels. White tablecloths were ironed so stiff they could double as shields. And the staff, normally a seasoned, unfazed bunch, were jittery, darting around like squirrels near a blender. "All right, people," barked Andre, the head maitre d', clapping his hands with the gravitas of someone preparing troops for battle. "He's booked for 8 p.m., so let's keep the floors immaculate, the specials memorized, and whatever you do, don't engage him in eye contact." "Who's he?" asked a fresh-faced server who'd just transferred from the Midtown location. Everyone stared at him like he'd asked why fire was hot. From the far end of the restaurant came the ominous creak of the massive double doors. It was 7:58 p.m. "Positions!" Andre whisper yelled, and the room dropped into a hushed, tense stillness. Through the doors walked Charles Kingsley III, tech mogul, billionaire investor, and possibly the world's most unnecessarily difficult diner. He was flanked by two silent, bulky bodyguards in matching charcoal suits and sunglasses. It didn't matter that it was night. Charles wore his sunglasses indoors too. Of course he did. He moved with the confidence of someone who believed traffic lights were mere suggestions, and that waiting in line was for people who hadn't invented their own cryptocurrencies. He paused near the entrance and sniffed. "Smells like burnt time," he said flatly. Andre almost dropped his iPad. "Of course, Mr. Kingsley. I'll have the chef flogged immediately." Charles made his way to his usual table, table 7, chosen not for the view but because he could see every single entrance and exit from it. He sat down slowly, his bodyguards standing behind him like stone statues. One pulled out a chair. The other placed his custom silk napkin in his lap. He exhaled, then adjusted his cufflinks, 18-karat gold with embedded NFC chips he used for contactless payments. A young server approached timidly, a bead of sweat already forming at his hairline. "Good evening, Mr. K. Kingsley. Would you like to hear the specials, Tony?" "Stop." Charles raised a finger. "Do I look like someone who requires specials? Bring me the same thing I ordered last Friday. But better. And this time, if the soup has even a whiff of nutmeg, I swear I will buy this building and turn it into a parking garage for my bad moods." The waiter nodded and scurried off, passing another server and whispering, "Abort. He's in peak tornado mode." Within 10 minutes, 3 different servers had fumbled near his table. One knocked over a water glass. Another forgot his wine preference. A third, poor Randy, accidentally called him Mr. Kensington. Charles merely looked up, expression blank, and said, "I own a company that can replace your job with a microwave and a drone." Randy quit on the spot. By 8:20 p.m., most of the staff had developed a severe case of strategic invisibility. People were ducking behind bread warmers. Andre was in the walk-in fridge hyperventilating into a paper bag labeled, "Do not serve." And Charles? He looked vaguely disappointed, as if the only thing worse than service that annoyed him was no service at all. He tapped his watch. "That's it," he muttered. "Next week, I'm bringing my own chef and just paying rent." That's when the kitchen door swung open with a slight squeak, and a voice called out, "Hey, who's the guy in sunglasses at night? Is he blind or just trying to land a plane with his aura?" The room froze. Several servers dropped utensils in slow-motion horror. A lone plate shattered in the distance. From behind the swinging doors stepped a woman wearing the standard black uniform, a crooked name tag that said Lola, and a disarmingly wide grin. She was holding a tray and chewing gum with the relaxed confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea what kind of bomb she'd just walked into. Charles turned his head. Slowly, like a predator sensing unfamiliar prey. "I beg your pardon?" he asked coolly, arching one perfectly manicured brow. Lola blinked, popped her gum, and walked right up to the table. "I said," she repeated cheerfully, "you look like a guy who could either own half the city or be moments away from demanding to speak to someone's manager." A long, stunned pause. Then, against all odds, Charles smiled. Not a sneer. Not a smirk. A genuine, confused, almost boyish smile. "Well," he said, folding his hands, "aren't you a refreshing punch to the face?" Lola tilted her head. "Thanks. I bottle that. Want me to bring you one?" And just like that, the air shifted. In the kitchen, Andre dropped his paper bag and whispered, "What the hell just happened?" Out on the floor, Charles leaned back in his chair, clearly amused for the first time in years. Lola grabbed a notepad. "All right, mystery man. Hit me with your order. But fair warning, if it involves gold flakes or any animal that had a name, I'm gonna sass you into next Tuesday." Charles chuckled. Surprise me. The tornado had touched down and found itself outsassed. The following morning, Le Chandelier's staff gathered like survivors of a shipwreck. Randy, the now former waiter, had already updated his LinkedIn to say he was seeking growth opportunities in environments without emotional terrorism. Andre wore sunglasses indoors and kept muttering things like, "She looked him in the eye." She spoke to him, Andre. In the staff lounge, Lola sat cross-legged on a stool, sipping coffee like she hadn't just juggled plutonium the night before. "All right," she said, brushing a croissant crumb off her apron. "Can someone please explain why everyone looked like I walked in with a live grenade in my hand?" A dishwasher named Marie leaned over and whispered like it was a prayer. "You served Charles Kingsley. And lived." Lola frowned. "Was I not supposed to?" Andre stormed in with a clipboard and panic in his mustache. "No, Lola. You were not supposed to. You mocked him. In public. At his table. In front of his goons." Lola sipped again. "Well, yeah, but I did it with charm. You said he was trying to land a plane with his aura." He smiled. He never smiles. Lola stood, stretching. "So what? I made the crabby millionaire laugh. Big deal. Maybe he needed it. Maybe he's just rich, not radioactive." "You don't get it," Andre snapped, jabbing his pen in the air like it was a wand that could banish optimism. "This man once sued a chef because his souffle collapsed emotionally. One time he refused to tip because the water was too wet. He sends back dishes after he finishes them. And you? You told him off like he was a guy who double-parked in front of a bodega." Lola blinked. "To be fair, that's what he acts like." Andre sighed, dramatically pinching the bridge of his nose. But before he could deliver a full lecture on the hierarchy of customer fear levels, his earpiece crackled. Boss," came a shaky voice from the front desk. "Mr. Kingsley's here. Again. Early." Andre turned ghost white. "Tell him the restaurant burned down." Lola stood straighter. "I got it." "No." Andre grabbed her sleeve like a mother gripping a toddler near a swimming pool. "You're on window polishing today. You're banned from the floor until we figure out whether or not he's plotting to buy the restaurant just to demolish it with you inside." But it was too late. Out on the floor, Charles Kingsley III stood near the hostess stand. No sunglasses this time. No bodyguards either. He wore a navy sport coat over a black t-shirt, still intimidating, but with a vibe that said, "I read brooding poetry now." Lola sauntered out before anyone could stop her. "Hey there, sunglasses. You back for the sass special?" Charles turned. Something flickered across his face. Was that pleasure? I was hoping you'd be here, he said, voice smooth but quieter than usual. Let me guess. You missed the sound of someone not kissing your wallet. He chuckled. I missed the breadsticks. And yes, the irreverent commentary from someone who isn't terrified of me. Well, they are delicious, Lola said, plucking a breadstick from the tray and taking a bite. And I'm broke, not stupid. I'll take tips, just not insults. Charles eyed her. I like you, Lola. Her chewing slowed. You know my name? He tapped his phone and turned the screen toward her. There it was, a staff directory from Le Chandelier's public website, with her face circled. That's creepy, she said flatly. He shrugged. That's efficient. She held her stare. Well, Mr. Efficient, if you're here to test my patience, you're going to need to order something more annoying than the gluten-free air salad you requested last time. I thought you'd appreciate the irony. I thought you'd appreciate flavor. They stood in silence. The staff were peeking out from behind curtains and corners like it was a hostage negotiation. Finally, Charles broke the silence. I'll have whatever you recommend. Lola narrowed her eyes. You're giving me that power? I'm giving you a challenge. You realize I might serve you a grilled cheese and charge you $500? He smirked. If you add truffle oil, it's a deal. Lola snapped her gum. Coming right up, King Charles. He winced. Please don't call me that. You like it a little. A tiny bit. She winked and turned to the kitchen, calling out. Chef, I need a grilled cheese with truffle oil and a side of inflated self-esteem. In the kitchen, a confused line cook yelled back. Do we even have truffle oil? The restaurant, for the first time in months, buzzed with a strange new energy, laughter. And as Lola scribbled his order with exaggerated flair, Charles watched her with an expression that made his bodyguards, who'd snuck back in, glance at each other. He's smiling again, one whispered. The other nodded. Should we be worried? Fridays used to be chaos at Le Chandelier. Waiters sharpened their escape routes, the dishwasher doubled as a prayer chamber, and someone always pretended to be sick around 7:45 p.m. But now, it was 7:30, and everyone was watching. $5 says she makes him laugh again, whispered Jenna, one of the veteran waitresses, peeking around the espresso machine. I'll put 10 on him flipping the bread basket like last time, muttered Julian, who still had mild PTSD from being hit by an airborne sourdough roll. At exactly 7:45 p.m., the doors swung open with less drama than usual. No entourage. No sunglasses. Just Charles Kingsley III, wearing jeans, and what appeared to be an unbranded navy polo. No one said anything, but the entire floor collectively blinked. Lola, casually leaning against the bar with a menu rolled up in one hand like a scroll, spotted him immediately. Well, if it isn't the Emperor of Entitlement arriving early. Did your calendar delete your 8 p.m. superiority complex? Charles walked over with the ghost of a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. I wanted to make sure your ego had time to breathe before we started dinner. She flipped open the menu, stared at it blankly, then handed it to him upside down. Here, all the choices you're going to ignore. He took it, turned it right side up with mock seriousness, and said, I appreciate the illusion of agency. Lola waved him toward his now usual table. No one had officially labeled it his, but every staff member avoided table 7 like it was cursed by a swamp witch. She followed him, carrying the bread basket with the ceremonious air of someone offering a sacred artifact. Fresh tonight, she said, placing it on the table. Sourdough, focaccia, and an extremely passive-aggressive whole wheat that might ask you about your childhood. Charles peered inside. This one's too warm. That's called baked, she said. And this one's shaped weird. It's artisanal. Is it supposed to look like a taxidermied boot? Lola crossed her arms. Are you seriously starting a negotiation with carbs? This is where you draw the line. Charles leaned in slightly. Bread is sacred. It's the foundation of civilization. I only consume bread that respects me. She pulled a focaccia triangle out of the basket, held it up to her ear, and whispered, This one said you're emotionally constipated. Charles burst out laughing. loud enough that a nearby couple turned their heads. "Touché," he said. "Keep that one. I like my food honest." From across the room, Julian whispered to Jenna, "Oh my God. That's his real laugh." "That's not his. I just crushed a small startup laugh." Lola sat down across from him, uninvited, and leaned on the table with a faux serious expression. "So, what kind of torment are we ordering tonight? Do you want the $75 micro salad with existential dressing, or the filet mignon that comes with a side of guilt?" "I'm feeling adventurous," Charles said. "How about you pick?" Lola squinted. "You mean without mocking me mid-course or filing a Yelp review via satellite?" "I trust your taste." She froze for half a second. The staff watching did too. "Are you sick?" she asked. "I might be. Do you need a doctor? A priest? Your therapist?" "Lola, because if you're about to develop a personality, I need to inform the chef. He keeps nitroglycerin in the back for emergencies." Charles laughed again and leaned back. "I just realized something." "Oh no, you're thinking. That's dangerous." He nodded at her. "You're the first person who's ever talked to me like I'm not about to buy the building they're standing in." Lola tilted her head. "You mean I haven't?" "Not yet." "Well, damn. I better start charging you emotional rent." Their eyes locked, half banter, half something unspoken. The air between them felt different now, the electricity of mutual amusement starting to short-circuit into curiosity. Before either of them could ruin it with sincerity, Lola snapped her fingers. "You know what? You get the unpopular special." Charles raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "It's not on the menu. Chef invented it out of spite one night when a customer asked if we had gluten-free caviar. It's spicy, confused, wildly overpriced, and leaves you full of regret, but you'll keep thinking about it in the shower 3 days later." He smiled. "Sounds perfect." She stood, tossed the menu over her shoulder, and called back toward the kitchen, "Chef. Table 7 wants the unpopular special. Add extra melancholy and a drizzle of Who Hurt You." The kitchen clattered in acknowledgement. Charles watched her walk off, still grinning. The other servers quietly gathered behind a potted plant to place bets on whether or not they'd end up on a reality show. He reached into the breadbasket, grabbed the sourdough, and took a bite. Then paused. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. "That is good." It started with a folded note. Not a text, not an email, not a dramatic voice message delivered by an assistant. An actual piece of heavyweight stationery slid into Lola's apron pocket during a particularly chaotic Saturday dinner rush. She found it between taking a cappuccino to table 3 and defending a steak from a woman's emotional support Pomeranian. Unfolding it, she expected something passive-aggressive like, "Please stop emotionally insulting the sourdough." Instead, in crisp, confident handwriting, it read, "Dinner? Just us. I promised to wear civilian clothes and bring my own bread. Charles." Underneath was a time and location. Rooftop. Tuesday, 7 p.m. Lola snorted so hard she choked on her own gum. "What is this? A rom-com or a threat?" Julian, peeking over her shoulder, gasped. "Did he ask you out?" "The bread warlord." She flipped the note around. "Looks like it." Marie, drying a wine glass, muttered, "Well, either he's planning to propose or trap you in a villain monologue." Lola rolled her eyes. "If I die on a rooftop, please make sure they don't put 'she tried' on my tombstone." Tuesday evening arrived. The rooftop was on top of a private club Charles owned, because of course he did. No signage, no valet, just an elevator that required a retina scan and possibly a short prayer to the gods of tax evasion. Lola stood at the base of the elevator in a green thrift store dress, twirling the hem like it owed her money. She considered leaving twice on the subway over, once when she almost tripped getting out, and again when she realized she might have accidentally ironed her dress with a toaster. She stepped inside the elevator and muttered, "Please don't be an ambush. Please don't be a dramatic PowerPoint about trust issues." At the rooftop level, the doors opened to reveal a space that looked like a billionaire's Pinterest board exploded. Fairy lights, candlelit tables, and a single chef cooking over a fire pit like a particularly wholesome Viking. Charles stood near the table, looking shockingly normal. No designer suit, no creepy entourage, no sunglasses in the moonlight. Just jeans, a well-fitted dark sweater, and a nervous glance at his phone. When he saw her, he stood straighter and smiled, awkwardly, like someone who didn't know where to put his arms. "You came," he said. "I had a coupon," she replied. He grinned. "Good. I only take sarcastic guests on Tuesdays." Lola walked up and took in the setup. "All right, rich boy, what's the catch? Are you about to tell me I'm being filmed for a How to Humble an Heiress reality show?" He pulled out her chair with a mock flourish. "No cameras. Just food. And maybe a conversation." She raised an eyebrow but sat anyway. "All right. I'm listening. But if this turns into a pitch for an app that replaces waiters with AI holograms, I'm throwing myself off the roof." He held up his hands. "No pitch. I already own that app, but that's not the point." The chef, an older woman with a thick French accent, approached, handed them menus that looked hand-painted, and said, "Do not ask for substitutions, or I'll throw you both off the roof myself." Lola lit up. "I love her already." Charles handed his menu back without looking. "Chef knows me." Lola studied hers. Do I go for the truffle risotto or the duck breast that sounds like it has a tragic backstory?" "Pick both." "Why? You trying to impress me with your net worth or your cholesterol?" He leaned forward slightly. "Neither. I just want you to enjoy yourself." Something in his voice dropped the temperature by 5 degrees, not cold but real. Honest. She noticed, for the first time, that he wasn't wearing a watch, a ring, or even cufflinks. Just him. Quiet, unsure, slightly undone. "Okay," she said, setting down the menu. "Let's skip the small talk." "Why me?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "You could have any model, actress, or influencer desperate enough to fake a gluten allergy for you. Why the loud waitress with opinions and $27 in her checking account?" He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Because you don't treat me like a commodity. Or a circus act. Or a god. You treat me like a person." She frowned. "Yeah, well, people should try that more often. You're not that scary. Just intense. Like a software update that hasn't been debugged yet." He laughed, full-throated and surprised. "That might be the nicest insult I've ever received." "I'm here to serve," she said, raising a wine glass. They clinked glasses, his with wine, hers with sparkling water, because she didn't trust him that much yet. Dinner arrived in stages. The food was phenomenal: melt-in-your-mouth pasta, duck so tender it could write poetry, and a chocolate torte that made Lola moan out loud. "Okay," she said, wiping her mouth. "You have 2 redeeming qualities now. This torte and the fact you know when not to interrupt it." They lingered on the rooftop for hours, talking about everything from failed business ideas. Charles once tried to patent a smart umbrella that tracked storms via Bluetooth, to their childhoods. Lola used to perform comedy skits for her goldfish. There was teasing, sure, but beneath it something else. A flicker. The warm glow of 2 people discovering how unexpectedly easy it was to talk when no one was performing. As the night wore on and the skyline turned velvet blue, Charles stood and extended a hand. "Dance with me?" Lola blinked. "You know how? I've had lessons." "Of course you have. I bet you've had lessons in falconry too." He didn't deny it. She took his hand, skeptical but curious. They swayed awkwardly at first, barely moving. "You're stiff," she muttered. "You're short. You're rude. You're breathtaking." She froze. Not because of the compliment, but because it was said so softly, without irony, without armor. "Well," she said after a beat, "that's cheating. You can't say that and then not step on my foot to balance it out." He smiled. "Consider it an investment." As the music drifted from the rooftop speakers and the city glimmered below, neither of them noticed the kitchen light flickering out behind them. The chef left silently, knowing this scene needed no witnesses. The rumors started before the bread had time to cool. First came the whispers. Charles Kingsley tipped in cash. Not credit. Not crypto. Not shares in a startup that sold smart yoga mats. Cash. Neatly folded. Real American currency with a little handwritten note attached that said, "Good service. Keep your soul intact." Then came the sightings. He smiled at someone. He held the door open for the busboy. He asked how the dishwasher was doing. And meant it. By the time Lola walked into Le Chandelier the following Friday, the kitchen staff had created a small shrine in her honor. A photo of her taped above the bread oven read, "Patron saint of hospitality and mild verbal violence." Next to it was a lit tea light candle and a tiny container labeled "Blessed Salt," used once on Charles's fries. She squinted at it and muttered, "I leave for 2 days and I become a mascot." Andre appeared from behind the bar, dramatically holding a clipboard and wearing an expression somewhere between pride and deep existential confusion. "Do you know what you've done?" he said, voice trembling. "Depends. Are we talking about the truffle oil incident or the unauthorized rooftop grilled cheese date?" He's booked a standing reservation. Every Friday. At table 7. With your name next to it in the system. She blinked. "You're joking." "I wish I were." He even requested that we replace the table's name in the server interface with Lola's throne. I didn't even know that was programmable. From across the room, Julian pointed to a small plaque recently bolted to the table's base. It read, "Here sits the sass." Marie peeked her head out of the kitchen and shouted, "Tell her what he did last week." Andre sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose again. He volunteered. Lola squinted. "To be more of a pain in the ass? To bust tables." "What?" He carried plates. "Badly. Broke one. Apologized. Swept a corner of the kitchen. Bought the dishwasher new headphones. It was unsettling. We thought maybe he was prepping for an undercover boss thing." Julian whispered dramatically, "Or he's dying and hasn't told anyone yet." But Lola just grinned and tossed her apron over her shoulder. "Nah, he's softening. Like a stale croissant left in the sun." That night, when Charles walked in, no guards, no sunglasses, just a dark button-down and sneakers, the staff didn't scatter. Instead, a chorus of faint greetings followed him. "Evenin', Mr. Kingsley. Table 7's all set. Try the salmon tonight, it actually likes you." He approached table 7 and found Lola already seated, sipping an espresso like she owned the place. "You're late," she said without looking up. "I'm 3 minutes early." "Exactly. Late for your usual dramatic entrance. No sunglasses? No edible entourage." He smirked and slid into the seat across from her. "I left the fireworks at home. Tonight I thought I'd go incognito, billionaire, but humble." She reached into her apron, pulled out a napkin, and unfolded it to reveal a gold name tag. He squinted. "What is that?" She placed it on the table and leaned back proudly. It read, "Lola, the Millionaire Whisperer." Charles laughed, loudly, without restraint. "That's official now?" "Oh yeah." The kitchen voted. "I get a tiara on holidays." A waiter came by and poured water into both glasses. He didn't tremble. He even smiled. Charles blinked. "Did I enter a parallel dimension?" Lola took a long sip. "Nope. Just a world where you stop terrifying baristas for breathing too loud." He looked around. The restaurant, once buzzing with tension every time he appeared, was calm. Relaxed. Friendly. It was weirdly nice. "Do you know," he said, folding his hands on the table, "that I once bought out a restaurant because they served me soup that was the wrong shade of orange?" Lola gave him a hard stare. "You're telling me this now, why?" He shrugged. "Perspective. This place it's different. Because no one cowers when you reach for the wine list? No. Because you make me forget I'm supposed to be feared." She smirked. "And here I was, thinking you just liked being roasted like a red pepper." He gave her a genuine look. One that softened around the edges, like butter warming to the room. "I like being seen." Lola blinked once, twice. Then deflected the moment, the only way she knew how. "Well, if this gets any more sentimental, I'm charging you therapy rates." "Fine," he said. "Put it on my tab." Later that evening, Charles wandered into the kitchen like a nobleman trying to understand the peasantry. The chef grunted. The sous chef ignored him. The dishwasher pointed to a sink full of dishes and said, "You know how to rinse, Your Highness?" Without a word, Charles rolled up his sleeves. 15 minutes later, Lola found him awkwardly loading spoons into the sanitizer while arguing with a cook about the correct angle for stacking salad plates. "Careful," she said, arms folded. "If you get too helpful, we'll start making you clock in." He looked up with sudsy hands and a sheepish grin. "What can I say? I'm trying to earn my whisper." The chef passed by and smacked his shoulder with a ladle. "Next time you mop." "I'll send someone," Charles muttered. "I heard that," Lola said. Andre, watching from the doorway, shook his head slowly. "We've created a monster." Julian leaned next to him and added, "No." She tamed one. And from across the room, as laughter rang through the kitchen and breadsticks baked in the oven, the restaurant finally exhaled. "Is this one of those rich guy traps where you lure me to Europe and I wake up in an underground handbag factory?" That was Lola's first question as they touched down in Switzerland. Charles, exiting the jet with a soft chuckle, looked every bit the relaxed billionaire, cashmere coat, ski goggles, and a level of casual confidence that suggested he'd probably been born in a luxury spa. "No handbag factory," he said, "though I did once invest in one. Long story. Terrible return. You're safe. This is just a weekend getaway." Lola squinted at the mountains. "And what exactly do you expect me to do here? I'm from the Bronx. The closest I've come to skiing is slipping on a patch of ice next to a hot dog cart." "You'll do great," he said, handing her a tiny paper cup of gourmet hot chocolate. "Besides, I mostly brought you here to see you insult the Swiss cheese." They arrived at the private chalet later that evening, perched dramatically on a snowy cliffside like something from a Bond villain's Pinterest board. There were fireplaces in every room. Even the pantry. The bedroom had a pillow menu. There was a tub that filled from the ceiling. Lola wandered around wide-eyed. "So, this is what it looks like when capitalism goes to therapy." Charles poured them each a glass of wine and pointed toward the slope out the massive glass windows. "You see that little run there? That's the beginner trail. You and I are going down it tomorrow. Together." She stared at him. "You do know that me on skis is basically a cartoon death scene waiting to happen, right? That's why I'm hiring a ski instructor. And a medic. Possibly a priest." The next morning, Lola emerged in borrowed designer ski gear, looking like a fashion-forward marshmallow. Charles was already outside, stretching in a way that made it very clear he took private lessons and enjoyed being better than other people at things. "Okay," Lola muttered, clipping on her helmet. "If I die, I want she was right about the fondue on my tombstone." The ski instructor, a cheerful man named Otto with a beard so perfect it looked fake, offered encouraging words. Lola ignored him. She was too busy trying not to slide backward down the hill while standing still. Charles, of course, glided down the beginner slope like he was filming a cologne commercial. "Come on, slowpoke," he shouted. "Pizza the feet." "Pizza," she yelled back. "I'll give you a pizza upside the head, Kingsley." He turned to laugh, and promptly caught the edge of his ski. The moment unfolded like it was in slow motion. One wobble, a curse word that started with SH. Then a full somersault. He flew through the air like a wealthy, flailing snowflake and landed face first in a pristine pile of powder. Lola's jaw dropped. Otto gasped. A nearby child clapped. 2 hours later, Charles lay in a small mountain clinic with a sprained wrist, a bruised ego, and a bag of ice resting dramatically on his forehead. Lola, seated beside the bed, stirred a pot of fondue from the hospital cafeteria with a plastic spoon. "So," she said, not bothering to hide her smirk, "is this part of your charm campaign? Fall in front of me to make me feel confident." He grunted. "I was showing off. You face-planted into a snowbank. It was a majestic descent. You looked like a GoPro ad directed by your enemies." He chuckled, wincing slightly as he adjusted his arm. "I had it coming," he admitted. Lola dipped a piece of bread into the cheese, held it up, and said, "This is what happens when you ignore the laws of physics and sass. The fondue judges you." He tilted his head toward her, watching her laugh. You make even this feel bearable." She gave him a look. "Because I'm feeding you cheese and sarcasm? Because you're here." His voice lowered. "And I don't feel like I have to impress you. I don't have to perform." Lola shifted, suddenly unsure if it was the fondue or the way he was looking at her that was making her warm. "You do realize this could have been avoided if you'd just stuck to snow angels and humble pie." He grinned. "I thought maybe if I looked like an idiot, you'd finally stop thinking of me as some untouchable billionaire caricature." She paused, stirring the cheese with unnecessary focus. "Who says I do? I used to watch people adjust their posture when I walked into a room," he said. "Every room. Even my family. But you act like I'm your annoying older cousin who borrowed your car and left it on empty." She laughed. "Because you are half the time." A quiet moment passed. He reached out with his good hand and took hers, lightly, just fingertips. "You make me feel real." Lola's eyes met his. Something about the vulnerability in his face, usually so armored, so polished, made her heart do something inconveniently squishy. "I'll admit," she said softly, "this whole almost dying in front of me bit is surprisingly effective." He smirked. "So you are impressed?" "I'm slightly moved." "Don't let it go to your head." "I already have. It's why I fell off the mountain." They sat like that for a while, her feeding him tiny pieces of bread dipped in overly salty cheese, him offering running commentary about how bad hospital robes were for his image. But underneath the banter was something new. Not flirtation. Not banter. Closeness. The kind that couldn't be bought, borrowed, or scheduled by an assistant. That night, back at the chalet, Lola tucked Charles into the absurdly large bed and handed him a mug of chamomile tea. "You're officially off ski duty," she said. "Stick to walking on flat surfaces. Or let's just move our future arguments to sea level." He smiled up at her, sleepy and soft. "And you?" She leaned against the doorframe, watching him. "I'm starting to think I might like you better when you're not trying to impress me. I think I like me better that way, too." She smirked. "You're still annoying." "I know. Good night, snowflake." "Good night, sass whisperer." Exactly 1 year later, the staff of Le Chandelier stood in a circle, dead silent, in their finest formal wear, staring at a sign posted to the front door. "Prohibited closed for private event." Tonight, this table hosts love, breadsticks, and one reformed megalomaniac. Management and Lola. Julian read it twice and muttered, "So we're really doing this." He's marrying her. The sass queen herself. Marie dabbed her eyes with a cloth napkin. She tamed the beast with carbohydrates and casual insults. A tale as old as time. Andre, in a tuxedo that looked like it had been steam-pressed by anxiety, paced nearby. "All I ask is that no one sets fire to the wine cellar. Or proposes a toast involving cryptocurrency. We've come too far." Inside, the restaurant had been transformed. Table 7 was gone, replaced by a long family-style table under soft golden lights. The chandeliers sparkled with extra smugness. Tiny gold place cards read things like, "Julian, former waiter, current eyewitness to history." "Otto, ski instructor/trauma support." "Fondue in spirit." The theme? Unreasonably fancy meets completely ridiculous. There were breadstick centerpieces. A ring bearer dressed as a baguette. The programs were printed on napkins. At exactly 6 p.m., the music changed. The staff hushed, and in walked Charles Kingsley III, not in a tux, but in a dark tailored suit that still whispered, "I own 3 satellites, but I'm chill about it." He looked happy. Slightly nervous, but happy in a way that made his usual arrogant aura seem like a distant cousin who had moved out and left no forwarding address. He nodded at the staff. "Evening, everyone." Julian whispered, "He just greeted us." Like a person. Marie fanned herself with a menu. "I've lived to see miracles." Then came the music cue that made everyone turn. There she was. Lola walked down the aisle between the tables, not in white, of course not, but in a deep emerald green dress that glittered under the lights like a bottle of champagne with opinions. Her hair was pulled back with a little too much personality, and she wore gold sneakers under her gown. Of course, She held no bouquet. Instead, she carried a miniature bread basket. "I'm not crying," Andre whispered as she passed. "That's just high-end emotion leaking from my face." When she reached Charles at the front, she tilted her head and said, "Last chance to back out, rich boy. I've got a getaway Vespa parked out back." Charles smiled. "Only if you promise to drive." The ceremony was brief, hilarious, and borderline sacrilegious. The officiant was their former bartender, who opened with, "We are gathered here today because this man couldn't stop returning to a restaurant, and this woman couldn't stop roasting him like a rotisserie chicken." Charles's vows were handwritten on the back of a wine list. "I was a man who had everything except peace. And then you gave me sarcasm, soup, and the ability to laugh at myself." Lola's vows were memorized mostly. "I promised myself I'd never date someone with more than one bank account. Then you showed up with 7 bodyguards and a moral crisis. But under the pretentious coat and custom cologne, you're just a guy who needed someone to call him on his nonsense." Everyone clapped. Someone sniffled. The dishwasher wiped a tear with his apron. Then came the kiss. It was long, a little awkward, slightly unbalanced, perfectly them. The reception was, predictably, a mess in the best way. Instead of a first dance, they performed a choreographed waiter routine involving fake spills and synchronized eye rolls. The cake was shaped like a giant bread roll. The favors were tiny jars of emotional fondue mix. Charles gave a toast halfway through the night. "To the people who kept serving me even when I didn't deserve it. To Lola, who made me pay, emotionally and financially, for every meal and every mistake. And to the restaurant, which became more than a restaurant. It became a mirror, a classroom, and eventually a place where I learned how to be a person worth dining with." Applause erupted. Andre collapsed onto a seat, mumbling, "We've gone full rom-com. Lord help us." Lola took the mic immediately after. "I just want to say one thing. This man once yelled at a bowl of bisque for being too introspective. And now he's out here quoting himself like a Hallmark card in a Hugo Boss suit." Charles grinned. "But seriously," she added, softening, "thank you for showing up, not just here tonight, but back when I told you were unbearable. Thanks for being the guy who broke a dish in my honor and then learned how to wash one." Later, as the party settled into chaotic, wine-soaked laughter, Lola and Charles stepped outside the restaurant onto the quiet sidewalk. Snow drifted gently from the sky, soft and slow. Lola leaned against him. "So, Mr. Kingsley." "Yes, Mrs. Williams Kingsley. I suppose now that we're legally bound, I have to like your bread opinions?" "Not legally, but I appreciate the gesture." She looked up at him, smirking. "You still arrogant?" "A little." "You still annoying?" "Moderately." "You still bringing truffle oil to breakfast?" "Only when you're mad at me." She reached for his hand. "Good. Wouldn't want you getting too soft." They stood there, watching snow land quietly on the sidewalk. No entourage. No drama. Just the billionaire and the waitress. And love, unexpected, hilarious, a little messy. Exactly the way it should be. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.